And now it's time for another Dice Tower review with Mike Vincent.
Hello everyone, Michael Vincent here. Thank you for watching. Today we're going to be taking a look at the fourth adventure pack in the Shadows of Mirkwood cycle, and this is the Hills of Emyn. So we're going to go through, we have a new tactics hero to look at, and some sort of interesting cards that all sort of have these tricky mechanics that have to do with characters leaving play or entering play and having different effects. So there's some interesting cards here which I'm kind of excited to take a look at. So let's jump in and take a look at our new hero. Okay, so here we have Brand, son of Bain. He is a tactics hero. He has the keyword Dale, and he has a starting threat of 10. He has 2 willpower, 3 attack, 2 defense, and 3 hit points. He joins the rather exclusive club of having the ranged keyword on a hero, and his ability reads response: after Brand, son of Bain, attacks and defeats an enemy engaged with another player, choose and ready one of that player's characters. So it seems on the internet that Brand, son of Bain is a polarizing hero. People tend to either like him or dislike him, and I would definitely fall into the like category. I remember listening to a podcast on this game, and people sort of trashing Brand, son of Bain. I was a bit surprised because I'd always had good experiences with him. So you may want to think about potentially building a deck around him. My wife and I have had some success in the past making a hammer anvil deck where you have one set of heroes dedicated to doing damage with ranged, and another player dedicated to having heroes with more defense. So the idea is that one player will sort of engage enemies and block, and the other one is able to attack with ranged and do damage. And so if you're trying that sort of strategy, you have Legolas, and now you have Brand, son of Bain. And if you've bought the Hobbit expansion, you could also use Bard the Bowman, giving you 3 tactics ranged heroes. He's got good attack with 3, and actually pretty well-rounded stats as well, with 2 willpower and 2 defense. Some people have commented that the 2 willpower is potentially pretty useless because you're thinking of attacking with Brand, son of Bain. However, I do find that there aren't always going to be enemies worth attacking, especially if your partner isn't engaged with any. And so he's a viable quester, particularly for a tactics hero. And so he's well-rounded this way, and if you need to, if you have some readying effects and you need a last-minute defender, having 2 defense is okay. Much like Legolas, in order to have his ability work, he has to defeat an enemy and also defeat an enemy engaged with another player, and then you can choose and ready one of that player's characters. And that can be pretty nice, particularly, and we'll take a look at some characters in a minute that have some nice abilities that can combo well with Brand, son of Bain. So I certainly think he's a solid hero. I would almost have a hard time understanding why people don't like him. I've heard people complain a bit about his willpower, and perhaps he might have a hard time killing enemies, but you can use Dunedain Mark in him to give him some extra attack or equip him with a weapon to make him a little more damaging. So let's take a look at some of the characters that will combo well with Brand, son of Bain. So of course there are many heroes and many allies which will give abilities which it causes them to exhaust. So therefore having Brand, son of Bain ready one of these heroes and characters will give fruitful benefits. So just 3 examples here, all happening to be lore. Perhaps if you're playing with a partner, they may want to be lore. So we have the Warden of Healing, so he can heal. So by readying him, you are able to heal 1 damage from 2 different characters. The Hen of Marth River Song, you can ready him if you want to take a look at the encounter deck so that you know what you're up against next turn. Or perhaps you want to ready Gleowine, as he can choose a player and that player can draw a card. So this, being able to reap these extra little benefits from killing an enemy with Brand, son of Bain is a pretty nice little effect. I guess one thing though that might be a setback for you, if you tend to play a lot of solo games, that really takes a lot of the wind out of Brand, son of Bain's sails. Clearly he's meant to be played multiplayer, as he's going to be attacking enemies engaged with other players, and so if you tend to play this game solo, then Brand, son of Bain is going to lose a lot of luster. So that's maybe something to consider if you tend to play a lot of solo characters. Okay, so moving right along, let's take a look at the 2 tactics cards from this adventure pack. We have Melidor's Flight and the Descendant of Thorondor. So the Descendant of Thorondor is an eagle ally. He has 4 cost, 1 willpower, 2 attack, 1 defense, and 2 hit points. He is a creature and an eagle, and reads, Descendant of Thorondor cannot have restricted attachments, and after Descendant of Thorondor enters or leaves play, deal 2 damage to any one enemy in the staging area. So we've continued to see this entire theme of this adventure cycle has been eagles. All the packs have included new eagle characters, and we see 2 more that work very well with some eagle synergy. So Descendant of Thorondor is very interesting in that he's one of the few characters or cards at this point who can deal damage directly to the staging area. Now there will be lots of cards in the future that will do this, but if you're going in chronological order of the game, then Descendant of Thorondor is one of few who can do some direct damage. So his response of after Descendant of Thorondor enters or leaves play, deal 2 damage to any one enemy in the staging area. And so there's some very clever cards we can use to combo with Descendant of Thorondor to maximize the use of him. Of course, then when he's out on the table, he could quest for 1, attack for 2, or he can block for 1 defense and 2 hit points. Is a bit costly though at 4 resources. So Meldor's Flight reads, Action, choose an eagle ally, return that character to its owner's hand. So we can see for free, we can play this card in combination with the Descendant of Thorondor, so that you could bring Descendant of Thorondor out into play, do 2 damage to an enemy in the staging area, and then choose an ally, return that character to its owner's hand, to then do another 2 damage to an enemy in the staging area. So being able to do 4 direct damage is pretty devastating. That's going to take care of most easy and medium level enemies, or could really do some nice damage to a bigger enemy with more hit points. So let's take a look at a few other cards that combo well with Descendant of Thorondor. Okay, so in my opinion, Sneak Attack is probably the best example of a card to go with Descendant of Thorondor for 2 reasons. Firstly, this will greatly reduce the cost of Descendant of Thorondor from 4 to 1, and this allows you to put Descendant of Thorondor onto the into play and out of play in the same turn for a cost of 1. That's going to allow you to do 4 damage for 1 cost, which is excellent. Basically the same as Gandalf. Now we also see the Horn of Gondor, so if you do have the Descendant of Thorondor leaving play, that's going to give you some extra resources, and perhaps this could also be used with Prince Imrahil to ready him for an attack. So there we have the 2 Tactics Eagle cards for this pack. Okay, moving right along to our leadership cards from this adventure pack, we have the Keen-Eyed Took. Keen-Eyed Took is a hobbit, has a cost of 2, and has 1 willpower, 0 attack, 0 defense, and 2 hit points. Has some interesting abilities that read Response. After Keen-Eyed Took enters play, reveal the top card of each player's deck. Action, return Keen-Eyed Took to your hand to discard the top card of each player's deck. So, an interesting ability. One that on the surface may not seem to be too useful. I'll admit to being somewhat baffled when I first read Keen-Eyed Took, thinking he was a pretty useless ally. But when you consider if you have cards that benefit from characters leaving play, then suddenly you have the option to bring Keen-Eyed Took onto the table and then potentially return him to your hand, therefore triggering any effects that benefit from when a character leaves play. It also allows you to scry the top card of your deck and take a look. If it's something that you think is pretty useless at this moment, then you also have the ability to potentially discard it and in hopes of getting something better. Or vice versa, if there's something crucial at the top of your deck, well, then you know you're not going to use any cards that would potentially discard a top of the card from your deck. So, a decent card, and I would like to spend a little bit of time just looking at some of the effects, cards that would benefit from having a character leave play. Now, with a questing ability of 1 and 2 hit points, you're not going to be able to do too much with Keen-Eyed Took. You could quest with him for 1, and of course you could chump block with him for 2. Certainly that's one use for him, but let's take a look at some cards that would benefit from returning him to your hand and therefore having a character leave. For example, we have Prince Imrahil. After a character leaves play, ready Prince Imrahil. So you could use Keen-Eyed Took to ready Prince Imrahil. If you have the Horn of Gondor on the table, after character leaves play, add 1 resource. So this would be a way to give you an extra resource to either yourself or a partner who would have the Horn of Gondor. Or Valiant Sacrifice, after an ally card leaves play, that card's controller draws 2 cards. So you can start to see how Keen-Eyed Took, if you have cards that benefit from characters leaving play, is actually a worthy ally who is versatile enough in that you could use him for questing, Perhaps you could boost him through other player cards or as a chump blocker. So not an amazing ally, certainly not going to light the world on fire, but has some interesting uses if you feel like you want to invest the time to building sort of a deck that would work with that mechanic. So the next leadership card is Rear Guard. This is an event with a cost of 1 and reads quest action, discard a leadership ally to give each hero committed to this quest +1 willpower to the end of the phase. So this is certainly a useful card in the right situation if you have the right allies worthy of sacrifice. It's worth noting that this card says to give each hero committed to the quest +1 willpower. So this includes both the willpower of yourself and other players you're playing with. So this card becomes more beneficial the more players you have, and therefore the more heroes who are committed to the quest. So potentially, if you're playing with 2, 3, or 4 players, then for discarding a weak ally, something like Snowborn Scout or Keen-Eyed Took, who we just discussed, who don't have many abilities other than when they come into play. Their attacking, willpower, and defense are quite low, and so it may be worth sacrificing something like a Snowborn Scout to potentially give you a boost of 4, 5, 6 willpower, depending on how many players you have in the game. So for a cost of 1 and potentially a chump blocker style ally, Rearguard certainly has some ability.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.